club takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ring the bell, Kathleen, go ahead. If I could have your attention, friends, we're on live television. I'm going to need you to come back together. Hello, everyone, welcome back. My name is David Simmons. I'm president of the Canadian Club Toronto and your event host for today. Let me start by acknowledging that I'm joining you from Toronto, the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It's a privilege to be able to gather on this land, of which Indigenous peoples have been the caretaker of for many, many generations. I'm delighted to welcome a physically distanced, fully vaccinated audience to another one of our events here in the 125th season of the Canadian Club. I can tell to our guests joining us online, almost everyone is wearing a tie today. It's a signal of our enthusiasm to be back together fellowshipping over lunch. As you watch today's event, please engage with us on social media. There are hashtags and accounts on your table. You can join us. And for those of you online, the hashtags are on your screen right now. We are going to learn more about the province's plan to make working in this province even better. Ministry figures tell us that 7.5 million people are employed in Ontario, the vast majority of which enjoy full-time jobs. The Working for Workers Act 2022 will enhance worker protections and hold employers more accountable for providing healthy, safe workplaces. If you have questions for the Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, please note them on the Q&A cards on your table if you're in the room, or you can hit submit a question on screen if you're joining us online. At this time, I want to acknowledge today's event sponsors, Elliston, represented by Jeff Smith, and Labatt, represented by John Zuricelli. It's okay. I love you both. Yeah. Okay. For those of you joining online, they're clapping because I've said his name incorrectly now twice, once before the broadcast and once during, but he's generous. We have a third sponsor, Waste Connections of Canada, and we thank you for your generous support. I also want to welcome a table of youth and young leaders from Ryerson's Leadership Lab and U of T's Political Science program who've been supported by Bell Canada and our dear friend Simon Dwyer. Welcome to our youth and young leaders table. Where are you? Wave, thank you for being here. We love you. And just so you know, I really do love you. And 20 years ago, the minister would have been at that table. So you keep on rocking, and then you can have work for workers in 2022. All right, now let me introduce our guest speaker, who is a wonderful member of provincial parliament. He's in his third term as the MPP representing Landham, Kent, Middlesex. He's held a number of key ministerial portfolios. He currently serves as Minister of Skills Development, Labour. I got the name wrong, Monty, I'm sorry. Okay. Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, and he's had that portfolio since 2019. He prides himself on engaging with the province's labour leaders, and within his first 4 months as minister, he met with over 150 of them. Before his current role, he was Minister of Infrastructure, introducing legislation to bring natural gas to rural areas of Ontario and high-speed internet to the underserved. The community leader and former small business owner is spearheading the Working for Workers Act, which addresses protections for digital platform workers, the province's labour shortage, as well as privacy, health, and safety concerns. This afternoon, Minister McNaughton is joined in conversation with Jake Hirsch-Allen, North American Workforce Development and Higher Education Systems Lead at LinkedIn. Jake speaks regularly on the future of work and on learning. He serves on a number of boards, including the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity, and he's a director with us here at the Canadian Club. Minister, Jake, I'm pleased to pass the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to repeat what David said. It's great to be back in person with everyone. I can tell you I would prefer being here with no tie on, but I thought I would dress up for the occasion. I also want to point out, I guess first and foremost, that my wife Kate is here today. Kate, thank you for everything. I promised her when things opened up after March 1st in Ontario that I would take her for lunch. So we're here today with 250 of our best friends, the true romantic that I am. I'm just so excited to be here with all of you today, and this is great. It was well-timed with the lifting of restrictions that we're able to join the Canadian Club for this important discussion that we're going to have. It's great to be here with so many familiar faces and, of course, some new faces. And as it's an election year, oddly enough, it's good for me to be with a lot of new people as we head to the polls in June. I'd like to talk to you a bit today about our plan to build an Ontario that works for all workers. But if I'm going to ask you to spend this Thursday afternoon talking about the solutions, it's important to first identify the problems that we're facing. For one, the pandemic has certainly accelerated changes in the way people work, all of us. Workers in Ontario and right around the globe face new challenges, but they also face new opportunities. They need support to overcome the challenges and make the most of opportunities. And then there's also this other really big problem. There are not enough workers here in Ontario. We are facing our first of its kind labour shortage that puts our entire economy at risk. Today, there are more than 330,000 jobs going unfilled. That's more than the population of Windsor, Ontario. I hear it, Premier Ford hears it, I know all of you hear it, from shopkeepers and merchants along Main Street saying, I want to hire, but I just can't find the workers. Each of these jobs is a paycheck going uncollected, and that's a missed opportunity to strengthen a family and build a stronger Ontario for all of us. For the rest of us, we feel the labour shortage too, in supply chain slowdowns, long waits for services, longer lineups, and being forced to travel far from home to find basic necessities. It's a quiet crisis of making sacrifice after sacrifice in our quality of life because our economy can't put enough people in enough jobs. And that brings me to why I believe businesses can't find workers. It's because the system has neglected workers, either in their pay, in benefits, or training opportunities, or hours, or the rights they hold as employees. That's why, under the leadership of Premier Ford, our government is on a mission to rebalance the scales. We're putting workers in the driver's seat of Ontario's recovery. Ontario must be a place where the economy is about the people on the front line. Working with labour leaders and business, we have a plan to tackle this challenge head-on. Our future is bright, but it has to be brighter for everyone. That's why we're relentlessly working for our workers. To accomplish our mission, we need all hands on deck. Things only work when everybody works together. Workers, labor leaders, business, and government. We all want to build our roads and bridges, build our healthcare and long-term care system, and build projects that our communities need, be it a new school or an ice rink. We all want to build an Ontario where hard work pays off and big dreams come to life. And to do that, we're calling on everyone to pitch in. Now, what does it mean to be a government working for workers? First, it's about protecting our workers and putting their interests above special interests. Second, promoting bigger paychecks, where workers can take home more at the end of an honest day's shift. And third, pursuing a path that leads to greater opportunities for everyone. Simply put, it's about choosing to make Ontario better. Now, let me address one elephant in the room. Why is a Conservative politician talking about all of this? Aren't these supposed to be the traditional issues of the left? Weren't Conservatives once supposed to be the party of bosses? Modern conservatism has to be about helping working people. As more parties of the left migrate towards the boutique social issues of the elite, they abandon hardworking people who truly deserve better. Somebody needs to stand up for the people that the left are leaving behind. For the people not on some ideological crusade, but simply looking for better pay and benefits and more respect. These are the people Premier Ford and I entered politics to help. We have to do better by these people. His brand of conservatism is changing politics for the better, and I'm happy to play a very small part in that. A workers' first plan for our economy is not just the best way to resolve the labour shortage. It's the only way to solve the worker shortage. Most importantly, rebalancing the scales is the right and long overdue thing to do. That's why we push forward a distinctly pro-worker agenda. Now, I understand it's not always the most popular thing to do for those in the C-suite, but it's the right thing to do for the people of Ontario. And of course, that line is a lot easier to deliver on the job site than in the concert hall of the Royal York. But if I say it there, I'm going to say it here. I honestly believe that Ontario is built by those who shower at the end of the day, not the start. Our aim is to spread opportunity and lift all boats rather than picking winners and losers. It's about helping people lift themselves up, support their families, and give back to their communities. So what does this mean in practice? We're putting our commitment to workers in law through trailblazing initiatives in our Working for Workers bills. By giving workers a better deal, we're both keeping and attracting more workers to Ontario. Our fall legislation protects family time by giving workers the right to unplug at the end of their shift, breaks down barriers that prevent immigrants from continuing their professions here in Ontario, and gives delivery drivers the basic human dignity of access to a restroom along their route. And with the introduction of our second workers' bill this week, we're not slowing down. We're protecting workers' rights to privacy by requiring employers to disclose how they are being monitored at work, guaranteeing digital platform workers basic rights like minimum wage and pay stubs, and recognizing credentials from workers who come to Ontario from other provinces faster. And the list goes on. Measures to protect temp and recruited workers, to prevent opioid-related deaths, to the banning of non-compete clauses that limit worker mobility. But the bottom line is clear. Better jobs with pensions, benefits, and bigger paychecks are right here for the taking in Ontario. Because we are taking a side, and it is the side of everyday people in our province. Now, I opened about talking about Ontario's historic labour shortage and my optimism for the future, and I really do want to close there. If you are able to work, we need you. Meaningful work is our hope, and we have a responsibility to help make those hopes a lasting reality for all people. And we're here to give a hand up and a second chance. Just last month, I announced a project that helped 30 people in southwestern Ontario who were on social assistance begin rewarding good-paying careers as personal support workers. I've also spoken of a program that gave people in Hamilton with a criminal record the training and support to start fresh with good jobs in manufacturing with pensions and benefits. These programs aren't one-offs. They are a shift in how we're doing things. We need to start measuring success by how many people we help move from social assistance into meaningful jobs. People like Natisha, who is a single mom who relied on social supports for years. She was able to try different skilled trades and got money to buy the tools that she needed through the Hammerheads program here in the GTA. She said the experience changed her life. Now she's making $44 an hour with a defined pension and benefit. And I remember calling her a year ago on the phone, and I said to Natisha, "What are you most proud of?" And she said, "For the first time in my life, I can buy a car." And she said both her daughters look up to her for the first time. I mean, these truly are life-changing careers. And then there's people like Colleen, who found a manufacturing job through the John Howard Society's Work Path program. The program can help people prepare for jobs with real tangible assistance like work boots or a bus pass. Everyone in Ontario from all backgrounds deserves a chance to be better off. I believe, and I know all of you do, that the Canadian dream is alive and well, and it's time we made it a reality for more people. Because when our workers are supported, they build strong families and even stronger communities, and that's good for every single one of us. Workers across Ontario are all different. The type of work they do is different, but it's a work ethic and dedication to building Ontario that unites all of us. Together, we can build our province to be stronger than ever, a province built by workers and for workers. We're ready to build. Thank you.
Mr. Jake. Great to see you again. Thanks. So, as was indicated earlier, my name is Jake Allen, and I run workforce development for LinkedIn, but I'm also on the board here at the Canadian Club. And I couldn't be more proud to be up here with this minister for a wide variety of reasons, a couple of which he highlighted. I think the minister's work for workers is really remarkable. It is the kind of move that almost no one in a leadership role in Canada in politics has made, at least in my lifetime. And so again, I'm grateful sort of to be up here with you for that reason. I'm also grateful because as an employee of LinkedIn, we have negotiated the largest public-private partnership in the world with this government, and we think that the impacts of your government as a model for other governments will sort of continue to resonate for years to come. I was super excited because the questions I got from the audience almost echo precisely mine, and so I'll sort of go back and forth between them. I gotta say, I was hoping for more hardballs from the audience, because mine, as you might expect, are a little on the softer side.
We'll take yours.
All right. But we'll mix it up. So, one of the things that I've been really impressed by is how you're a government of firsts. I mean, many of the things you talked about, particularly for Ontario, but really for North America, in some cases for the world, are firsts. And I think that has caught a lot of people by surprise. You did a good job in your presentation, in my opinion, of explaining the link between sort of conservatism and worker rights, but how about firsts? I mean, generally speaking, conservatism is often looking to our history, our heritage, our past. In many ways, you are setting new precedents.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jake. And I do want to just highlight the project that you mentioned. I'm a big believer in private-public partnerships. I think that comes from my days at infrastructure, where we built a lot of construction projects that way. But this is a huge opportunity for the people of Ontario, and the timing was perfect. It was sort of near the beginning of COVID, and we launched a partnership with LinkedIn for 100,000 people in Ontario to upskill, to retrain from the comfort of their own home. So the timing was perfect, and I know you have some great results that you can share for people here today. I've been very clear, we're not going back to where we were before the pandemic hit Ontario. We have an opportunity to lead not only Canada, but North America, and we are doing a number of firsts. I mean, we're the first to bring in the right to disconnect policy, which I referenced. We were the first to ban non-compete clauses here in the country. The first in Canada to bring in basically rights for gig workers for the first time. So there's many, many things happening on this front, but it's all around this principle that people are better when they find meaningful work, when they have a purpose. And we are facing this historic shortage in Ontario that actually, as all the business people in the room know, threatens our recovery. I mean, when you think 330,000 jobs are going unfilled in this province, it's billions of dollars in loss of productivity. So if we want to invest more in healthcare, invest more in education, we have to fill these jobs. And again, it also helps to build strong families and strong communities, and that's our priority.
So one of the areas in particular that you've leaned into is labor. And again, that's not necessarily an obvious place for a government like yours to go. And what's particularly interesting, I think, here in Ontario, because I work with your counterparts right across North America, in probably 40 states I've talked to sort of the equivalents of ministers of labor, and in many cases they're struggling with that link between labor, the private sector, and government. In fact, that triangle is sort of straining in a variety of ways that are also straining the economy. Whereas here, it sort of looks more like Europe. I mean, you sort of look more like Germany, where it's actually collaboration between those that is creating innovation and energy and economic output. How did you do that? How is Ontario so different?
Well, great point. I mean, I really wanted to send a signal when Premier Ford asked me to be the Minister of Labour back in June of 2019. Within 3 months, we met with over 100 labour leaders just to really send a message that we're going to resolve big challenges by working together, government, business, and labour, and we have to be at the table. And I think of my proudest accomplishment, and I think history will show it's one of Premier Ford's greatest accomplishments, is getting more people into the skilled trades. We need business, we need industry, we need labour and government at the table. That's why we're investing $1.5 billion to get more people into the skilled trades. And in comparison, that's $1.1 billion more than the former Liberal government ever spent in the trades. When the Ontario College of Trades was created a number of years ago, there's a decrease in apprenticeship registrations by 40%, or 17,000. I'm proud to say we've turned that around. We have thousands of more people going into the trades today. A lot of work to do, but in saying that, it's because labour, government, and business is working together.
I mean, it's remarkable. I've been learning from you throughout this process. So as an example, I met with the Secretary of Labour in California about 2.5 years ago, and they had just started to try to figure out this trades issue, right? Why is it that they don't have enough folks in the trades in a state the size of our country? And what's interesting is they are just now doing what I saw in a movie theater, again, a few years ago, which was start advertising for the trades, right? Start to create this sort of compelling message in support of an industry that folks haven't really seen as equal. How does one do that? One of the questions that I continue to have is, how do we persuade our children that it's just as good to be an electrician, just as powerful for the economy or socially impactful to be a plumber as it is a doctor or a lawyer?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's some friends here from Germany today, and for me it all started when I was Minister of Infrastructure, going to Germany and really listening to their businesses and to their workers about their model for really changing the stigma and changing the branding of the skilled trade. So I've been crystal clear, we don't need every single young person in Ontario going to university. We need to end the stigma around the trades, simplify the apprenticeship system, and get more employers bringing on apprentices. I mean, it's incredible, the opportunities. There's more than 140 different skilled trades in the province of Ontario. The message from all governments of different stripes over the last 20 years was you have to go to university, and there's nothing further from the truth. We need to tell parents, we need to tell guidance counselors and educators and young people that these careers are lucrative, meaningful. When you're in the skilled trades, as Premier Ford says, you have a job for life. You can start your own business. You can travel Canada. The sky is the limit. One of my favorite stories is one of my best friends who's an insulator. For the first time this year, he's going to make $200,000, wow. Almost $250,000.
Wow. As an insulator.
It's incredible. These are great jobs. There's thousands of them out there. And it's really around ending the stigma and telling people that these are first career paths.
Wow. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I was a public international lawyer a very long time ago, and I learned better over the years. But one of the things I was working on at the time was the right to privacy. And the future of work, so to speak, has changed a lot since 12 years ago. I was clerking at the Supreme Court of Israel. When we were looking at it back then, we were still using like wiretaps as the analogy for how one would think about privacy. And obviously, wiretaps are a far cry from WhatsApp and the various means that folks communicate at work now. How did your government address like some of these issues, which, from a complexity perspective, again, Supreme Courts have struggled with for years now?
Yeah, certainly. I should just back up to where we were, I guess, in the beginning on the first question. I said we're not going back to where we were before the pandemic hit. Back in 2016, about 5% of people work from home. At the height of the pandemic, we were up to 35% of people working from home. Technology is changing, work is changing, and it's only going to continue to accelerate. So back in the summer last year, we put a panel together, and Catherine Marshall's here, who served on the panel, but really a team of experts to study the future of work. And they came up with a number of recommendations, including the right to disconnect, banning non-compete clauses, changes to the way gig workers are regulated and paid, amongst many other things. But this idea of people having a right to their privacy, to me, is smart. It's common sense. I know during the pandemic, one of the stories that disturbed me the most as the Minister of Labour was these people working in a warehouse, and when they went to the washroom or went for lunch break, the boss was monitoring how long they were taking going to the washroom. I mean, that shouldn't be happening in Ontario. So really, this is all about bringing transparency around the issue. We're not telling every business how to do it. You come up with a policy that best works in your workplace, and the requirement is anyone with 25 or more employees has to have a policy in place. And on that note, over the next 6 months, my team is going to be working with the business community to give guidance, to do workshops on how to develop this. So it's about making Ontario the best place to live, work, and raise a family. This is good for business, it's good for workers, and it's good to attract talent here.
Amazing. Your comments about the bathroom made me think of your remarks earlier about showering, because I usually shower at the end of the day, and I hope that's more a commentary of how hard I'm working behind a keyboard than my hygiene.
I'll ask your team later.
All right.
How hard you're working.
But irrespective, I thought the line was really powerful because it does indicate how there are sort of two kinds of work in our economy right now. And interestingly, one of the questions related to a type of work that we haven't talked about at all right now, but of course, which is crucial to the growth of our economy, entrepreneurship. I started a software boot camp many years ago, and the lessons I learned through that process were sort of far greater, I would argue, than anything that I learned in post-secondary. And so I'm curious, this question from the audience is there a roadmap to offer an ecosystem for local entrepreneurs to innovate?
Well, excellent question. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I love to tell the story about my mom and dad in 1988 when they were buying a local home hardware building center from my dad's brother. And on day one, when they went in there in 1988, it was my mom and my dad. Sort of fast forward many years later, we had about 75 employees and was one of the larger home hardwares in the country in a population of 450 people. So it is possible for anyone to achieve anything in this great province and great country. On the entrepreneur side of things, I think there's a huge opportunity not only in innovation for people here, but one of the responsibilities I have in the government is immigration provincially. And 2 months ago, we launched an entrepreneur stream to attract international entrepreneurs here to Ontario. So our goal is to attract 100 entrepreneurs over the next 24 months to the province outside of the GTA, because we want to ensure that we're leveling up Ontario and that all regions are at par, and that's certainly my goal. But a lot of these policies that we're bringing forward is to encourage innovation, and we're not done. I mean, we did Working for Workers 1 in the fall, Working for Workers 2 now, this week, and I see this as a work in progress. As technology changes, as workplaces change, government has to keep up. I mean, governments have been notoriously slow in responding to market changes, and I'm proud that we're leading Canada and North America.
Me too. Minister, this audience member was curious about portable benefits, and I think we're getting into some granular territory here, so I honestly didn't know much about portable benefits until your administration. But the question is, how will the ministry ensure a system that provides appropriate coverage to workers but is fair to employers and healthcare providers? Yeah, great question. I'm particularly excited about this. This came out of the panel's work last summer. There's no blueprint in North America to do this. Again, Ontario will be the first. Less than 25% of people who work in precarious work or in part-time jobs have access to health benefits like dental benefits. So we will be the first jurisdiction in North America to expand benefits to all workers, including gig workers. In the next couple of weeks, we'll launch the team that's going to develop the blueprint to report back to government in a few months on how to do this. This is a monumental task, but again, if we want to attract and retain workers here in Ontario, this, I think, will be a game changer for the province. Makes sense. We've got an aging population, and I see this on LinkedIn demographics all the time, but we see it sort of right across the board worldwide in terms of what we call the silver tsunami, right? Folks leaving the workforce and not coming back, particularly after the pandemic. So this audience member is asking, part of the labor shortage is associated with some demographics not being fully engaged, and they're specifically referring to seniors. They're asking, what is being done to encourage later retirement and eliminate age ceilings? Yeah, really important question. I mean, we need all hands on deck. That's my message, and that's for all age groups. I think there's opportunities for every demographic to participate in the economy, and it's important. I mean, I saw my dad go through a retirement. It didn't last very long. My mom told him to get another job, but it's important to live with that purpose. I mean, it's about creating a meaningful life. These are the people that we want to help. There's all kinds of training program to involve all of these people. I mean, the LinkedIn training is a great example to upskill and to retrain for these in-demand jobs that are close to home for people. So that's probably a good note to circle back to where we started working together. Bearing in mind that sort of we've worked on the employment service system in Ontario a fair bit, can you speak to how you're seeing the substantial transformation that you're overseeing in Ontario's labour market? Yeah, you know, I'm excited about so many things that we're taking on, but one of the things that I believe we're going to really change people's lives is this model that we're building to get people from social assistance into meaningful jobs. In the last year, we have about 20,000 people on the pathway to a job or into a job. These are people that were on ODSP or Ontario Works. And the approach that I'm taking in transforming the Employment Ontario system in Ontario, it's to work with every individual as they come in to one of the offices or through the online portal. So things that we're doing today that governments haven't done in the past, we're buying Presto cards to help people get to their job. We're buying work boots and uniforms for people to start their jobs. We are sitting through interviews with people on ODSP to be there as the person's having the interview with a potential employer. I mean, it's all of these, you know, really individualized things that we're doing, and it's making a huge difference. I think one of the biggest injustices of governments in the past is that they haven't actually opened training programs in some cases to people on social assistance. So the Second Career Program, for example,
We've started offering that to people on social assistance. It's game-changing for these people. And again, we need all hands on deck to give people a sense of purpose, to get them into a meaningful job that they can provide for their families. It's in their interests, it's in the economic interests of this province, and it's in taxpayers' interests.
So you said one thing that sparked my imagination, and it relates to public-private partnerships. A bunch of Canadian provinces in different ways are exploring PPPs in new formats. I think BC is following the teachings of a woman named Mariana Mazzucato, and I think there is the opportunity for sort of more dynamic relationships, as you said, between the private and public sector. What's an example of where you're excited to go in terms of your government's relationship with the private sector?
Well, I can tell you on our training programs, I mean, the Skills Development Fund, we've essentially streamlined the majority of our training programs into one called the Skills Development Fund. These training programs are all about innovative training projects, so they actually can't be led by a university or college. They have to be led by, it could be a union, it could be an industry association, it could be a business, and they can partner with universities and colleges or private career colleges or LinkedIn, but they're to come to us with the training proposal. It's not, government knows best. And again, two that I can highlight. One was in Northern Ontario, where we have a labor shortage. Now, this was data from the fall, but 2,500 jobs are going unfilled across Northern Ontario in the skilled trades. With one of these training programs, we recruited 600 Indigenous peoples. Wow. They are now on the pathway to get into the electrical trades, wow, which is great. I mean, talk about almost, overnight filling that labor shortage. That's a great example. And the other one close to home for me was down in Sarnia. And it was a partnership between one of the unions and a college, I believe, and of course a whole bunch of employers. And they recruited 60 Indigenous peoples to pick up careers wow, in construction. And many were from my riding. Half the participants were women, by the way. And the barrier that the Indigenous peoples on the First Nations community were facing was getting to and from the training center. They had no transportation whatsoever. So for a very nominal cost, we hired one of the participants, a 44-year-old lady named Sarah, to drive the shuttle bus every day, to pick them up, drop them off at night. It's a great program. But the best news is 100% of the people successfully completed that project.
Amazing.
100% of them have defined pensions and benefits today.
That's fantastic.
But that's a great example of the public-private partnership, and
amazing.
I'm all for it.
So I'll end on a personal note. And I think it's important that we talk about this, which I think is the most important issue facing society right now. And Ukraine obviously is in the midst of an invasion, and there's a lot of folks in this province with strong ties to that country. My grandfather was from there. Both my grandparents were Holocaust survivors who sort of went through Ukraine and Poland on their way to Canada. And it's a situation where I think all of us, or at least I certainly, feel a little impotent, but like we want to be doing something. What's the province doing, and what can we be doing?
Well, great question, and thanks for sharing that obviously very personal story. There's no doubt everybody in this room is thinking about our friends in Ukraine, praying for them and their families, and the people that are here that have loved ones in the Ukraine. What we're doing as a government, I'm on the phone at least once a day with the Federal Minister of Immigration, Sean Fraser, who's doing a great job. We're working collaboratively together. I can assure everybody here that Ontario will be there to support the people of Ukraine when they get here. You talk about the Ontario spirit, the Canadian spirit. More than 20,000 jobs, like employers have stepped up, unions have stepped up. There's 20,000 jobs waiting for people today if they come from Ukraine, and that number is going to continue to grow. So kudos. I had people as I walked in here today saying, sign me up, my company wants to hire people from Ukraine. So congratulations and thank you. Thank you. And furthermore to that, we encourage obviously the federal government to get people here as quickly as possible, but we'll be here for language supports, committed to a dedicated stream here in Ontario to fast track people here we need to knock down all barriers to get them here as quickly as possible.
So it's the perfect note for me to ask another question if you're open to it. I've been told we've got 5 more minutes.
Perfect.
So we'll keep going a little more. And this question from the students in particular says, does the plan to support workers include migrant workers? And is that happening now or when?
Absolutely. I referenced in my remarks how we're cracking down on temporary help agencies and recruiters. Obviously, like every business in the province, the overwhelming majority do a great job protecting the health and safety of their workers. In the temp help agency and recruiter field, there are some bad actors, so we're going to ensure that they have the highest fines in the country if they break the rules. Businesses that hire through temp help agencies will have to ensure that they're licensed, which is important. And we're also sending a dedicated team of inspectors out to make sure that these temp help agencies are playing by the rules. All that to say, many migrant workers that come to Ontario are hired through a temp help agency, so we want to ensure that every worker in the province, including migrant workers, earn at least minimum wage. They're not sleeping on bales of hay, which has happened in the past. I mean, unimaginable things have happened, but we are taking strong action, and that was in our first Working for Workers legislation.
Amazing. So one of the questions from the students related to small businesses, and I think it's an important segment for us to address because it's such a huge percentage of our economy, and yet often it gets overlooked. From what I've heard during the pandemic, small businesses were not only hit particularly bad, but it was also much more difficult for governments to support them than some of the sort of larger enterprises like the one I work for. How are you helping small businesses?
A great question. I come from small business. I come from Main Street, Ontario. They are the backbone of our economy. One of the things that we've done as a ministry and as a government, last week we just announced $1.5 billion in rebates from the WSIB. We've managed to turn around the WSIB. It wasn't that long ago. It was actually on the brink of bankruptcy. Now they have surplus funds, and we're making sure that money gets out to small businesses. And of that $1.5 billion, 95% of the businesses receiving that money will be small businesses. So in terms of actually how much cash that is for businesses, if you have 80 employees, it'll be a check in April for $30,000. So it's a substantial amount of money.
Awesome. All right, so I'll end on a passion point for me, and I think this is actually a hard question in a variety of ways, but
it's always that last question that gets...
We always know that, not always, we now know that through the pandemic, tourism, hospitality, retail, these are industries that have been hit really, really hard. The restaurant industry has just been really, really having a hard time for some obvious reasons. And yet one industry that doesn't get talked a lot about is the arts. And part of what somebody explained recently to me, which is so important about the arts, and I think a lot of us are feeling this absence, is that they provide a means of catharsis, right? Like we are in a time when all of us are stressed out about a pandemic, about war, about a wide variety of other things, and we're looking for that release, which sometimes, watching a film or a ballet or going to see a concert can allow for. And people haven't had that release. How do we bring back the arts?
Well, I'm going to put a plug in for our time when we were at infrastructure. But our government actually was the one that funded a big cost of the Massey Hall renovation, which is good news. Such an iconic
it's open, I think, right?
Institution. Yes, it's open again now. I think there's huge opportunities here. This is part of getting everything open so people can enjoy the arts and getting back to restaurants and that tourism sector. I think the biggest thing government could do was lifting restrictions, getting the doors of these businesses back open, and thankfully on March 1st, that's why we're all here today, businesses and museums and other places are reopened.
Amazing. All right, folks. Well, on that note, I'm going to pass it back to David. But before I do, and in part because I'm worried about him upstaging me yet again with better jokes and better looks, I wanted to thank you, and in particular, thank you for coming to the Canadian Club, but thank you for the work that you're doing for the province of Ontario, for our country, and really for the world as a model.
Great. Thank you,
Minister.
Jake. Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Minister McNaughton. For those of you that weren't here earlier, I mentioned that Minister McNaughton's just a really good person, and it's really great to hear him speak so passionately about the work he's doing for the people of Ontario, for the people of his riding, and for the people to influence people across Canada. Those of us that have the pleasure of knowing Minister McNaughton know that he's doing it because he cares. So thank you for the effort that you're putting into it and the model you're demonstrating. Let's give a round of applause for the minister. For those of you in the room who are part of the Public Affairs alumni crew, you'll know those. With some of us work on campaigns, you know. Monty, I'll do you one day. Don't worry. Yeah, it's just fine. Our notes look exactly the same, so I don't know which one's which. Ontario's getting stronger. These ones are yours. You want me to read that one for you too? Minister, on behalf of the Canadian Club Toronto, thank you for providing the details of the innovative new legislation that promises better protections, wages, and opportunities for workers and their families. We appreciate your commitment to making Ontario one of the best places to work in the country. And your acknowledgement of the changing work environment that we're all emerging back into is an important dynamic, and we wish you the best of luck in the transformation. Jake, thank you for your ability to engage. You're a very skilled moderator. You are hilarious, and you're attractive. Before we close, I want to extend another round of thanks to our generous sponsors, Ellis Don, Labatt, and Waste Connections of Canada. Let me also take this opportunity to remind you about upcoming events. On Tuesday, March 8th, we'll host a virtual panel in celebration of International Women's Day, Diversity at Work in Canada, Breaking the Bias. Some of Canada's newest CEOs, who also are women, will be joining us for that conversation. The following Wednesday, March 9th, we'll welcome Canada's Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, where he'll discuss his plan for a greener economy. And on March 10th, we will welcome a group of CEOs in conversation with John Stackhouse from RBC around how Canada can build a net zero workforce. Let me conclude by thanking our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications, and livemeetings.ca for making today's event possible. Thank you for being here with us in person. We're very grateful. Thank you to those of you who joined us online. We wish you all the best. Stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.